All right, so I know we did this a little bit before, but if you could just state your name and the organization that you're a part of.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Ashley Steimer-King. I am the program director for Girls Learn International, which is a project of the Feminist Majority Foundation.
Amazing. Thank you, Ashley. We're so excited to have you here. So just hopping into our first question is, please describe your human rights education and training work.
Absolutely, happy to. So we see ourselves as a resource and a support for middle school and high school students that want to learn about human rights issues, that want to learn about gender justice or gender equity issues, and that really want to become activists on those issues that they care about most. So we have a peer-led human rights-based curriculum that our students use. It's actually not a curriculum because it's an extracurricular curriculum. So we call it our GLI guidebook. And it is a resource that students can use to lead meetings of their peers to explore complicated issues and how those issues play out in the real world. So we are teaching both the basics of human rights and also helping students to understand how human rights issues impact their own lives or how those issues play out in their own lives as well. We take the perspective that students are the expert on their own lives. And so we really want to support them as they understand how their lived experiences connect to experiences that other young people or other people in general are having in their own communities, in their state, in their or province, in their country, and internationally as well. So we have 220 chapters at middle schools, high schools, and other nonprofit organizations in 28 US states and 14 countries.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that introduction. And so into our next question, what is one aspect of your human rights education work that you're especially proud of?
Yeah, thank you for that. You know, I think it goes back to something I touched on a minute ago, is that we really want students to feel empowered to take ownership over their own understanding and their own, to sort of lead their own educational journey when it comes to human rights and gender justice work. So we try to come with resources, come with information, come with skills training, support, and networking so they can meet other young people that are doing the same kind of work and are interested in the same types of things. And then we try to step back. So we try to really be a space where young people can lead, and where young people can learn to use their voice, learn to value their voice and value their lived experiences, and then learn to listen as well, learn to listen to other young people, learn to listen sort of intergenerationally, sorry, tripped up over that word, as well. So we try, like I said, to sort of step back and let young people lead while providing all of the support and skills that they would need to do that. So I really think that that's what I'm really proud of. And I think that that peer-led model lends itself really well to the types of issues that we talk about. And so that's what I think is really valuable about the work that I do and that GLI does in general.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think it's amazing to hear about all of that work. So into our next question, why do you think human rights education and training is important?
Oh man, that's such a good question. And I feel so strongly about this. There are so many reasons. I hardly know where to start. So first of all, I think, we have a right to know what our rights are. That's sort of one of the primary reasons, right? It's built into the Declaration on Human Rights. It's built into a lot of these, documents, the policies, that you have the right to know what your rights are, and you have the responsibility to teach human rights to people that you're responsible for. So teachers, parents, right? We have the responsibility to inform others about what their human rights are. So that's sort of one of the main reasons, is that everyone has the right to know what their rights are. I think that also too, you can provide almost like an escape route to people who may be in vulnerable situations. By knowing their own human rights, you can sort of circumvent some of these vulnerabilities. Now, I'm not saying that human rights education can solve all the problems and that if we had it, there would be no problems left. But I guess what I'm saying is that the reason that some people are able to take advantage of others is because some folks don't know their own human rights. So I'll give you an example. When I was younger, I was in high school, I was like 15, 16, I was involved in an abusive relationship. And so if I had known what a healthy relationship was, if I had known that I had the right to live a life free from violence, if I had known about that I, had certain rights, and that my school and that my family had certain responsibilities to protecting me from people that were causing me harm, I'm not saying that that wouldn't have happened, but I think that possibly I would have had greater recourse to think about the situation and to think about it as, what are my rights as a person, as a human being? Like, just by being on this earth, what are my rights as a human being? And so I think that that's something that is important. And I think that that's why I feel so strongly about working with young people to understand their human rights, and very young people, I would even say, 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 3-year-olds can start to understand their right to bodily autonomy, right? Their right to live a life free from violence. And so I think that I just feel really strongly about human rights education, because I think that there's a lot of power in that, and that there's a lot of power for people who might have powerlessness in other ways, right? Or who might be vulnerable in other ways. And so I hope you don't mind me getting personal, but I just really feel like it's crucial to sort of educate people on things that are happening to people their own age, right? Mm-hmm. Both because, maybe they might be vulnerable to that themselves, but also because as a society, teenagers specifically, their job is to be integrated with people their own age, right? Their job is to come away from their family system in some ways, and to be more in touch with their friends, right? To grow their social life. And that's sort of their job developmentally. So I think that if we can, if you have a whole school or a whole class or a group of friends that have some basis for human rights knowledge and information, then you can, the community of young people can support somebody that might be in a difficult or vulnerable situation. So that's sort of a long answer and a complicated personal answer, but I just think it's super important. And I've seen human rights education work that way in the lives of some of the students and teenagers that we work with, and really seeing how it can support a community of young people.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable with us here, and for sharing that part of your story. And I think the work that you're doing is extremely empowering to future generations going through very similar situations. So thank you.
Thank you.
So on to absolutely. And on to our next question. How has your connection to Human Rights Educators USA made a difference to you and your organization's work?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that question too. I think that sometimes you get a little lonely doing this work. I mean, that's sort of another personal answer, but we don't often, it doesn't feel like there are a lot of organizations working on human rights issues. There are a lot of people, and through human rights educators, I've been able to see, oh, there are a lot more than I think, right? So there are a lot more people, individuals, teachers, educators working from a human rights framework, a lot more than I thought. So I feel like a kind of a part of a bigger movement, a part of a bigger thing than I did sort of before I started getting more involved with human rights educators. So I certainly really appreciate that. And I don't often think that the sort of, the work that GLI does and sort of where we're coming to the work from. So we're part of the Feminist Majority Foundation, like I said, and so we have a lot of I have colleagues, I have other organizations that are sort of based through a feminist lens or through like a gender studies lens, which I also super value. And I think those are not, human rights lens and feminist lens are very integrated, but I really appreciate being able to look at something from not just a feminist lens or not just a gender studies lens, but also being able to look at something through a human rights framework and lens, because I think feminism is often based in like an academic framework, at least this like sort of the feminist circles that I kind of run in. And I feel like having a human rights framework to look at some of the issues that we work with as well is also helpful. So I just think it's another helpful framework and sort of community of people to support the work that we do, and another way for us to look at our work.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that answer. And we're really glad to have you part of the network and to have this network to continue to build off of and work collaboratively.
I thought of one more thing.
Go for it.
Just the resources. All the time I'm seeing resources, and the training session that I was talking about with Christy earlier that we were a part of. That was super valuable and interesting, and it's just a really unique thing. Those resources that human rights educators provide is really unique, and I don't know of anywhere else to get those. So I'm really happy to be a part of the network for that reason.